Hello, everybody. We're back. I'm Tom Sosnoff. This is Truth or Skepticism. Joining me, as he has for the last 150 years, Harry Carey. All right, Dylan Radican, doing his best Harry Carey today. I like it, Dylan. I like the new look.
Listen, I thought it was appropriate for today's. I thought it was appropriate to wear these for today's discussion.
Okay. So let me give a little backstory and then we can start. Over the weekend, I was thinking about my cherry bomb that I write every week, and I thought about, concepts that we've talked about before on Truth or Skepticism, which is positive drift. I hate when politicians say, were you better off 4 years ago than you are today? Because it drives me crazy, because the answer is we are always better off in the future. Now, I know that about 10 or 15% of the time, it doesn't work that way, but 85+% of the time, we are always better off in the future. So the idea of, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, drives me nuts. And because I am one of these people that argue, due to positive drift, we are always better in the future. We will always be better in the future. The future is always better. Defining better could be lots of different things, but the future is always better. But the real question is, are we smarter? How far have we come? We are more efficient in 2024 because of technology. So I believe that we're more efficient. We do things quicker. But are we smarter? And is there a direct relationship between our intellectual capacity and what our future looks like? Like, can we continue to be the leaders of the free world as far as business, entrepreneurship, market cap, everything else, if we don't maintain some kind of a leadership role, or at least status quo with respect to intellectual challenges? And I think that's not a topic that gets covered enough. And, are we getting smarter, or are we kind of treading water going backwards?
So I was flying recently. I had to go to London for a couple of days. And I think it was the Economist magazine. I don't know if it was the current issue or a previous issue, that every time I speak, I hear my voice back 1 to 3 seconds later in a very peculiar audio phenomenon. So forgive me my measured speech.
Hold on.
But there was a cover, I think, of The Economist.
Maybe we can fix that. John, you got that?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Hold on, Dylan, 1 second.
Go ahead. It was the cover of The Economist magazine, and I believe it was talking about the movement of China to the front of the scientific research world. That the leader in medical research, scientific research, stem cell research, whatever, biological research, since World War II at the very least, has been the United States. And it's been a magnet for the best Russian scientists and the best German scientists and the best British scientists and the best Italian. That the quality of scientific research and the quality of medical research in the United States, and for that matter, physical materials research, physics research, chemistry research, was unequivocally in the United States. With the obvious being, of the university culture and Stanford and Harvard and all this. And the article was speaking about the transition of leadership in scientific research away from the United States, and certainly away from Europe and even Russia, towards China. So I think you can say, even, I don't think it's a matter of opinion that we, being the United States, or we being the United States plus Europe, are getting dumber, at least as measured by what is typically considered a standard of intelligence, which would be advanced scientific research, making rockets, curing medicine, all the sort of the most sort of hard sciences, let's say. Additionally, I think that it's sort of obviously is somewhat subjective, but not entirely. It's pretty clear that our political leadership is not improving, and it's not demonstrating a intellectual advancement in the way that it communicates and the ideas that are discussed in the political landscape, et cetera. However, leadership in the corporate world, if you look at everything that's been done at SpaceX, or you look at the efficiencies and standards of things that happen, at Amazon or at Apple, or they're sort of obvious examples of incredible intellectual and creative power. Obviously, we're getting dumber, right? Like but I say that as a function of sort of the average content on the mainstream media or the average content with the average politician. And so I think that the question I would ask you is when you ask the question, we getting smarter or are we getting dumber? Who is we? Because I think that the leadership in American corporate and large companies, they give there's a consistent brilliance that is manifest in product development, in engineering and research and development, all these things. At the same time, we're seeing I think, a meaningful decay in both political and scientific research.
Well, there's no question on the political front that, this year being a perfect example of probably I can't even imagine a time in our history where we were at a lower point as far as intellectual capabilities on, in our, especially in our higher offices. I'm not even going to talk about one individual over another. It's embarrassing. But that's not really where I was going so much to make this into a political thing. For many years, the U.S. has fallen way behind as far as, intellectual challenges, both on the technology side, on the scientific side. So not just engineering, but science, math, everything else. Going back into, for 20 some odd years, U.S. universities have never, for example, competed well in the programming Olympics. We've never competed well on a scientific front. We've never competed well, meaning that we haven't been world leaders on the educational side in a long time. What we have been able to do is make up for that difference with the way our market structure is and the way our capitalistic system works, our free markets work, and with all the capital that's available in the US, we've been able to fund innovation. And so I guess my question is the bigger story that when you have the capital, you can turn that into intellectual success, or is there something else there that I'm missing? Because I don't see it.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay.
And I'm still hearing myself back on a major reverb, which is challenging if that's fixable.
Yeah. I'm not sure. John, are you on this? Okay. We'll see.
But so anyway,
what I'm trying to say, Dylan,
you're talking about,
what I'm trying to say is that this is not a recent phenomenon where we've fallen behind on an engineering side, on a scientific side, on a math side. This is not recent. Countries like India, China, Russia have been, and many other countries around the world have been far ahead of us as far as pushing the educational envelope way in front of the U.S. for a long time now. It's been decades. We have been able to close the gap, and we have been able to continue to be market leaders as far as innovation goes, and as far as entrepreneurship, development, corporate development, and everything else, because we have this amazing money flow and source of capital, which overrides everything else. It basically is the source of a brain drain to the rest of the world. So it kind of gives this impression, oh man, we've got everything. I think as a society, though, my real question comes down to, as a society, just the average person, like are we moving at the speed that we should be in everything else? Do we have positive drift with respect to our intellectual capabilities, or is that something that is by definition capped? Is that something that's capped?
Well, no, actually, so here's what I'm going to answer you. I got it now. Let me answer your question, at least to the best of my ability.
Okay.
I think that the intellectual horsepower, the intellectual sort of edge is very similar to the way financial resources are hyper clustered with how like basically 100 people have half the money and everybody else has nothing, kind of a thing, in terms of hyper concentration, whether it's personal wealth or whether it's leadership in the stock market. I believe that there are two classes of people in the world, and one is extremely well educated and extremely intelligent and rapidly advancing, whether it's not just the actual sort of nature of problem solving, nature of awareness, nature of the process of establishing first principles and vetting and creating problem solving systems, and with the use of AI being the ultimate sort of edge in that right now. And then you have a different population that has none of those things. I think that there's an intellectual gap that is building that is very similar to the wealth gap. So it's not that we're getting smarter or we're getting dumber. It's that we're establishing one group that is hyper connected and hyper educated and hyper engaged, hyperactive intellectually, I guess you would say, and then a second part of the population that is deeply manipulated or uneducated and victimized, or whether it's self-victimized or otherwise. I don't mean to sort of suggest a victim narrative, but by the hyper stimulus of the mainstream media and social media, which feed content that basically sucks up 4, 5, 6 hours a day of people's lives in a way that is counterproductive to anything having to do with problem-solving skills or intellectual development of any kind. I think, for me, the definition of intelligence at the end of the day is, the ability for problem-solving and decision-making in a way that creates successful outcomes. And so, so if you're able to solve complex problems in a way that is pretty quick and is pretty correct, I would say that's a reasonable definition of collective intelligence. And there's one population that's extremely good at that, whether it's in corporations or otherwise. And then there's another piece, more of a split society, financially and intellectually.
Yeah, so I agree with you that we are at the widest divergence that we've been at, and there is the highest concentration, almost like the stock market, where we have concentrated risk. I think we have concentrated intellectual risk as well, and I don't know how to solve it, but I guess I'm thinking more of just the big picture in general. And has there been something that has led to us being very different than we like have the goals changed here? Has it been social media? Has it been our educational system? Like, where have we kind of fallen behind? Where have we fallen behind everybody else when it comes to just kind of, intellectual firepower? And I called it intellectual challenges because I think that's kind of the lifeblood of Tasty, and one of the foundations of everything that we built here was to create ongoing intellectual challenges in finance, because we felt that led to much better outcomes in all other aspects of your life. But I don't see anybody else doing that. And so I wonder, where is the disconnect?
And for me, I would say that it's sort of cultural breakdown, basically, that what you're dealing with, that when you transition to a culture that glorifies wealth at all costs or beauty at all costs. So the two most valuable things in the United States are to be physically attractive or to have a lot of money in our culture. And so being smart
But
or
is that
being
different? Is that different anywhere else in the world?
For sure it is. There are other countries where simply having a lot of money is not the most important thing. There are other countries where having a good education or being well informed and well, even in England, they value higher the idea of being educated than just who's the richest or who's the most physically attractive.
Do they really?
And so I'm not
Do you
for
think they
sure.
really? I don't know about that.
No question. No question. I mean, there is a basic value for being educated. There's an expectation that there's no expectation in the United States that anybody knows anything or can do anything. It's just who has the best ass and tits and who's got the most money. And I'm not saying that that's not the most important thing for in a lot of places, but I'm saying nowhere is that the United States singularly values those three things above everything else and assigns very little to no value to education or understanding anything. Whereas
you think that's different than what they do in Italy or Russia or Japan or anywhere else.
For sure. Yeah,
Really?
for sure I do.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe you. I don't believe you're right.
Well,
I don't believe you. I don't believe you're right.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. No, I do, but I believe that you're wrong. So I mean, there's a point of contention which we can explore. The problem with that point of contention is it's sort of somewhat difficult to provide evidence to substantiate one point of view or the other. I mean, because whatever it would be anecdotal. But I do believe, like the Nobel Prize is not awarded in the United States, for example.
Yeah, I know. Just what I said earlier. Like we don't win programming competitions.
But I'm saying we don't even create a prize, but we don't even award it in the United States. Like the idea of awarding somebody something for intellectual accomplishment. I'm not talking about winning Nobels. I'm saying we don't even give out the award.
Right. Our reward system is different. Our reward system is based on market cap. I mean, yes, we are different. We live in a different world here, but that doesn't mean that we don't place as much value on education as anywhere else. I don't agree with that. I think we do. I just don't think we do a good job of creating that as an incentive. See, in other places like in China, just as an example, or in Russia, or in other countries, probably many countries, the only way you can truly differentiate yourself, or India or somewhere else, is you can differentiate yourself through your intellectual capabilities. And that can directly lead to an opportunity that you can maybe monetize or that for status or whatever it is. It's not quite the same in the US. We don't place the same emphasis, and we don't reward education necessarily. We force you to go through this free market system to be rewarded. And so it's a little bit different. I'm not saying in the end, it doesn't work out to the same concentrations of education and wealth, and it doesn't work out to almost, the same end result. It's just a different way of getting there. And as a society, we create a less competitive environment for education. The only competitive environment we have in this country for education is that kids in high school and everywhere in lower school know that it's competitive to get into universities. And that's the best part about our university system, is that it creates competition at a high school level and below, because they know in order to get into a good college, you have to have a competitive grades.
Or you have to have a wealthy parent who's well connected.
That plays such a minor role. That's a minor role. That's a bullshit conspiracy theory role. That's not that.
But let's go to a more listen, because I would say one of the other great evidences of why you would say America is getting dumber. There's a negative drift on the average, would be in the nature of our political discussion and political leadership and the nature of the mainstream media. For me, I feel that the nature of our political candidates and who they are and how they present themselves and what their values are is actually evidence not of a dumbing down of America, but evidence of the absence of an actual democracy. Because I believe there are so many intelligent individuals in the United States. I interact with many of them on a daily basis, and many of us interact with many intelligent people on a daily basis. Some of us interact with extremely brilliant individuals on a daily basis. And the fact that I and almost anybody on there could anecdotally name 100 people who might be better suited intellectually to run for president of the United States, and instead we're left with the two candidates that are being offered, that's evidence of not a dumbing down of America, but evidence of a non-functioning political system that's surfacing political candidates whose primary skill is something that has nothing to do with leadership and something to do with control over the political system itself, in the more third world sense of the word control of the political
That's
system.
just this will be the end of this will be the last time this election. The reason that I'm not nervous about it, the reason that this doesn't scare me at all, and the reason that I don't fear for the future is because this will be the last election in the US of where we face with this kind of a dilemma and this kind of a situation. In the future, the system will change, and the candidates that represent both parties will actually be intelligent. They will actually engage in discourse. They will actually focus on the issues. I don't think I've heard a single issue actually. Maybe tomorrow night will be the first time anybody hears anything about anything, but I doubt it. And I think that I think this will be the action. We're bottoming out. The 2024 election is the bottom. It's kind of the lowest point in American history when it comes to our our political games and circus. And so I'm not concerned about it at all, because it doesn't. I'm not fearful for the future, because the beautiful thing about the way our systems work here is that we just adjust everything to make it work next time. So that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is that we don't have the right challenges in place right now to compete educationally and intellectually with other countries that are only focused on education in many of the STEM areas, and in many of kind of just broad-based, like we other places. There are actual discussions. They have conversations. They have they're able to argue intelligently. They're able to focus on issues, and kids are. And at all different levels, in grade school, in high schools, in colleges, there's actual meaningful discussions, and there's incredible learning through challenges. We don't have that. There's no incentive here.
But so I told you why I think that is. I'm curious, why do you think that is? Because I think that it's less valued in the United States. I think it's that the merits of debate, that the merits of a well-reasoned and well-presented argument, be it written or verbalized, is much more valued in China, Russia, Europe than it is in the United States. Just in the culture.
Yeah, it's more valued because it's the only way to get ahead. Because you have to, when everybody's equal, like when everybody has been normalized, when the economy has normalized everything else, the difference is the education side. And in the US, it doesn't quite work that way. In the US, you can actually buy status because there's such a the way our economics are, it's very disproportionate, and there's a huge concentration of wealth, which actually hides a lot of our deficiencies. What happens is that changes, and it changes quickly with a shift in our economy and or competition forcing us to change. It'll be one of those two things. So my guess is it'll probably be competition forcing us to change. And when that happens, it'll be good.
So what is that? My concern with that is, competition forcing us to change. My concern is that looks like China passing the United States.
If they have the ability, if I wouldn't be as worried about China because their government is too dysfunctional. Like that's right now, I don't worry about China, Russia, and India because all those governments are too dysfunctional. India is probably the most functional of those three, and probably has the most potential to attract capital. The difference happens when Andreessen Horowitz or Sequoia or BlackRock, whatever it is, when they decide to say, hey, we've got $100 billion, but 80 billion is going to India or 80 billion is going to innovation in China, that's when the US dies. So it's not a function of, it's all going to follow the capital. Right now, the Chinese government has destroyed the flow of money into China, so there's no risk at all. And the Indian government has destroyed the flow of money into India, so there's no risk at all. And in Russia, they've self-destructed. So that's why we've been able to maintain the lead we've been able to maintain over the rest of the world, because most of these other economies have imploded due to just really poor management, really bad politics and everything else, and bad systems. When that money flow moves, that's why when that pool of liquidity moves out of the US and is distributed globally, which is going to happen in the next couple of decades, that's when all of a sudden we are forced to revamp our educational system to then compete again intellectually.
I don't disagree with you. What I'm thinking about is that I think that it's too late at that point in time, because fixing that is a multi-generational. That's a 50 to 100-year problem to solve. You're talking about running at least a full 30 to 50-year generation through a new educational system before you even see the reemergence of anything competitive intellectually from any country. That's not unique to America. That it's taken generations for India or China to even try to get to where they are now, and they still have 1,000 challenges. In the decay of Europe as a function of a demographic collapse, right? The total lack of young people creates a certain future for Europe, right? There's no way you can make an argument for growth in Europe because there simply aren't enough people under the age of 40 to support any discussion of growth. And so my concern is that recovering from the intellectual defects or deficiencies of the American moment, but by the time the sort of pain is severe enough to force the recovery, that it's not an easy, that doesn't repair itself quickly.
Europe has other issues. China has there's certain issues in Asia. Japan has issues, China has issues. There's obviously issues in Eastern Europe and Russia and places like that. They just have their own problems. There are too many and there's obviously problems in India and countries like that as well. And it's all the problems revolve around protectionism and the way they've structured their trade agreements and their economies and all that stuff. And so they're very limited. Europe has the same, in my mind, Europe has the same problem. Europe is focused on the wrong stuff, doesn't understand the importance of market structure, never has. And the economies are too dependent on everything from tourism and not on the things that actually grow economies, which is technology and other things like that. So Europe has a whole host of other problems, and this isn't specific to the UK or to Italy or to anywhere else. It goes pretty much throughout Europe, and all you got to do is travel to Europe, and you can see it in 2 seconds. Until they come to grips with their own realities, which I think they're probably decades away, that's not what I'm concerned about, because they've always placed an emphasis on intelligence. They just haven't been able to monetize it because they don't have the structure, business structure in place. Places like India and China and Russia have a different mentality, and they do have a much better potential structure in place to monetize innovation and to monetize the intelligence. Europe just doesn't have it, but those places do, and they can monetize it, but they need outside capital. And the problem is you can't attract capital if you don't give the people that provide capital a way to get out. You have to give them an exit plan, or at least, they have to understand how they have an exit plan. And they haven't presented that. And until they do, those countries aren't going anywhere. So we have this window where we can't waste it. And we have to figure out, how are we going to basically turn up the heat on our own systems to improve our intellectual capacity from preschool through graduate school, because we have fallen behind, and we have to cut out all the bullshit, meaning we just have to stop all the craziness and focus on the things that are really competitive globally, and not the things that really don't matter.
So who do you think is the world leader in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math?
China and India.
Do you know? That's probably a way to answer it.
China and India, I would say, not even. I don't think anybody's close. Russia would be the next closest.
Mm-hmm.
They're light years ahead of us. Light years.
So let's assume that that's true. Some version of that's true. Basically, China, Russia, and India are the world leaders in STEM in terms of the number of young people that have extreme skill and aptitude and work ethic and whatever.
And a lot of that comes, from U.S. universities and U.S. institutions.
Well, I was going to say, of the best, I feel like the best of those countries, the Russians, best Russian, Chinese, and Indian scientists would prefer to come to University of San Diego or Stanford or University of Chicago or NYU.
They're all U.S.
They're all
trained.
In America.
Yeah, they're all U.S. trained.
But
at
I
that
also feel
level.
like they all come to the U.S. to work as well.
Exactly, because this is where the opportunity is.
So maybe the U.S. strategy is just to be a magnet for the best scientists in the world, and even if those scientists aren't American.
It is, as long as you have politicians that understand that and don't block people from coming here, and that support a brain drain, not the opposite. And it also is that way because there is no opportunity in the other places. Like, you just don't have that opportunity. So you have to do that. It's more about a necessity than it is out of desire. You think some kid from St. Petersburg, Russia, wants to live in Chicago? No, they want to live back where they grew up, where their family is, but they come here because that's where the opportunity is. The same thing. You think somebody necessarily from New Delhi or Mumbai really wants to come here? No, the answer is probably not. But this is where the opportunity is. And so you get comfortable with it, because you know what? Opportunity is something that if you've never been around opportunity before, you will do anything you can to get your hands on just a sliver of that.
Well, how about this for a brutal truth? Being extremely good at science, technology, engineering, and math is hard. It's harder than a lot of other things that people do. Okay? Like, it's just more demanding, more time, more focus, more intellectual, more synapses firing more often. When your country is poor, like India or Russia or China, relatively, there's a much stronger incentive if you're a young person to do hard things.
Yes.
Because you would like to you have a stronger incentive to improve your life, whatever that means.
We've gotten fat and lazy. We're fat and lazy. It's easy. Yes, I got it.
When you're with the richest country in the world, and the poorest people have a higher standard of living than the former king of Italy or the former king of Norway or whatever some historical royalty might be, the Sultan of Brunei, that there's no incentive for young people to do hard things.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree.
I get what's the thing where they say, good markets make bad deals, and bad deals make bad markets, and bad markets make good deals.
Okay.
Because you can't do a bad deal in a bad market, but you can do a good deal in a bad market. And you can't do, but you can do a bad deal in a good market, because good markets will support any deal.
Okay.
Or the other version would be, strong. I guess I'm not going to try this one because I'm going to screw it up. But you can't artificially create the pressure of being an impoverished Chinese girl in China whose only way to improve her life is to become really good at math.
Yeah, and I'm not
so that she can move to Shanghai, so that she can move to Chicago.
I'm not actually suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that for the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I'm suggesting that, like in the last however many decades, I have seen us go from having these, crazy like discussions that I felt were very challenging and were very and we would debate these interesting topics and all that stuff. And I don't feel like that exists anymore. I feel like now there's no such thing as debate. There's only, two sides. There is no debate.
I mean, I would say your average high school sophomore debate in England is more interesting and more capable than the U.S. presidential debate in terms of its intellectual honesty and rigor of the logic required to interact.
I mean, I want to give the presidential debate tomorrow night the benefit of the doubt but I know that is ridiculous. And I know that as a country, we are going to look at this debate tomorrow and we are going to be embarrassed in front of the rest of the world. And it's going to be like, people are like, how are they even remotely successful?
Because, as you know, I've spent increasingly a large amount of my time as a expat living in Italy. I have the privilege of being the American in the room who people ask, the non-Americans, be they British or Italian or whatever, they ask, what's happening? What, like, not even in a critical sense of like,
sure,
but just in the sense of like in the genuinely honest sense of confusion as to how a country that is widely viewed as the most creative, the most opportunity, for sure the wealthiest, for sure the most powerful economy, for sure the most powerful military, for sure actually the longest standing democracy in the world, could be offering as a choice for its leadership the current selection.
Of course,
it's not, and it has nothing to do with, oh, are you a Republican, are you a Democrat, do you believe in this or that? It is what it's like. It's like watching a sporting event. I don't know, pick a sporting event. It's like watching the Stanley Cup Finals the other day with the Oilers and the Panthers, and then you turn it on, and instead of them playing hockey, like they're dressed up in a chicken suit and they're trying to eat candy off the ice with a plastic beak. Yeah. And you thought you're watching a hockey game, a professional hockey game, and now you have these fully grown men wearing chicken suits trying to pick up pieces of saltwater toffee from the ice. I mean, that's the level of the disconnection from reality and the level of stupidity is that severe that it's not. There is no criticism right now of what's going on in the United States politically. There is a befuddlement, a confusion, a disbelief that what is happening. But I think many Americans share that same opinion.
Yeah. I mean, listen, people around the world really don't care about our political parties. They don't care about the actual politics of it. They're just in little bit in shock. They're like, okay, you know, like we don't get it, but we don't really care. It's just,
But we don't understand why you guys don't want to have even a modestly intelligent,
Right.
coherent leader.
Right. I get it. I understand. And it is embarrassing, and there's nothing else you can say. And we just kind of laugh it off and say, yeah, but our system works. But those aren't necessarily the countries that I'm worried about that say that, because they have their own problems, and we don't
Sure.
really care what happens there. I care about the fact that on a global scale, you know, we've been losing ground. Our markets have been gaining, and our intellectual capacity has been, or our pool of intellectual resources has been contracting, while our markets have been expanding. So we've been gaining market share, but losing intellectual resources. And I think in the end, that's not a good recipe for long-term success. And we have to reverse that. We don't necessarily have to bring our markets lower, but we have to bring up our pool of, we have to bring up our intellectual pool to a different level. We have to become smarter. We have to create an environment for positive drift in whatever that means with respect to smarts. And I don't think that that's the incentive right now. And I think that needs to become, you know, much more important and a much bigger incentive in the U.S. And I just don't think we incentivize, like, we don't have that system in place, and we have to put that system in place. The only thing that's an incentive right now is because it depends what school you get into. And from what school you get into, maybe it depends on what company you get a job with and this or that, you know, so that's still in place, but that will be hard to maintain if we lose our leadership role.
The nice thing is we're not about to lose our leadership role. In fact, our leadership, we have so much momentum in the form of leadership economically that we can afford to have the two biggest idiots in history run for president, and still no one cares.
No one cares, because when you have idiots in charge, there's no risk to changing. There's no risk of change because they can't.
Yeah, the momentum continues for whatever
stuck.
exists.
Right. And then when something is stuck in place, there's like, okay, that's why the markets aren't scared. All right, we've run out of time here.
It's predictable. All right.
Very difficult discussion. Let's put it that way. Not easy. Yeah, I didn't mean.
Good thing I wore my glasses.
Yeah. Dylan and I there will be no Truth or Skepticism next week, Dylan, because it's only a half day here in the U.S. markets next Wednesday. So we'll pick it up the following Wednesday.
Okay.
It's a July 4th half day markets.
4th of July. Okay.
Yeah, 4th of July. All right. Have a great week. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you. All right. Take care.
Bye.